I always used to say to the non-Muslim lecturers and other people as well, who invented social policy? And they'd look at me in a bit of a confused way because they think they've invented it. I said, no, the first historical account of the development of a social policy infrastructure is in the Khalifa of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu. And I'd say this to them and they'd look at me in a confused way. What are you talking about? What is social policy? I'll give you an example. Who knows what child benefit is? Anyone know what child benefit is? Children's allowance? Every child gets benefit every week. For many families, brothers, this keeps them afloat. Isn't this a beautiful thing? Where did they get it from? Does anyone know where they got it from? Umar radiallahu anhu. Umar ibn al-Khattab. Umar radiallahu anhu, again, he's patrolling his city. He hears a child crying. He goes to the woman. He says, why is your child crying?
And then later on in the night, the child's still crying. And Umar radiallahu anhu came again. And he said, what an evil mother you are. All night your child's crying, why haven't you looked after him? And she said, she didn't know this is Umar. She said, Amirul Mu'mineen Umar ibn Khattab has stipulated an allowance for those children who are weaned off. And I'm trying to wean my child off. And then Umar radiallahu anhu asked her how old her child was. She told him. And then in the Fajr Salah, the narration mentioned, Abdurrahman ibn Auf mentioned it, because I swear by Allah, Umar cried so much. Umar cried so much that we could not understand what he was reciting in the Fajr Salah. And then after the Fajr Salah, Umar turned around and Umar radiallahu anhu said to himself, he said, woe unto you, Umar, how many children have you killed due to this law of yours? And then he made, he stipulated that every child in the Muslim world which was born would be given an allowance. Child benefit started with the Muslims. Umar radiallahu anhu started child benefit.
Even in Ireland, I'm told in Ireland, brothers and sisters, she told me there, on the child benefit book in Ireland, it used to be written at the bottom, as was originally established by Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu. Umar radiallahu anhu established the treasury, the Baytul Mal. And in his time, brothers, you cannot even imagine the wealth that came to the Muslims. Let me give you an example. The treasury was established when Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, he returned from Bahrain with 500,000 dirham. And the story goes, Umar radiallahu anhu says to Abu Hurairah, how much did you bring back? 500,000 dirham. How much? 500,000 dirham. How much? He couldn't even believe this amount of money. I'll give you an idea of what currency was like at that time. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, his fortune was estimated at 50,000 dirham. 50,000. In that, the equivalent of him today would be multi-millionaire. Abu Bakr would have been considered as a multi-millionaire today. 50,000 dirham was his fortune. He spent it all in the service of Allah. He spent it all in the freeing of slaves, the saving of young girls who were being buried alive, and the support of the Prophet ﷺ. Multi-millionaire devoted his wealth to Islam. Now Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu has bought 500,000 dirham back. And there was no treasury system at the moment. So he established the Baytul Mal.
Anybody who could not work in the Muslim world was given an allowance. Umar is saying, he said, I swear by Allah, I will ensure that the Bedouins in the mountains of Sana will get their allowance. They will get their allowance. For Sayyidina Yarbu and other Sahaba who were blind, he actually had a carer. He had a carer to look after these people. Umar radiallahu anhu saw a group of Christians. Subhanallah. They suffered from leprosy. Umar radiallahu anhu took out wealth from the Baytul Mal. And he gave them, he spent on them to cure them. And those who could not be cured, Umar radiallahu anhu spent on them until their final days. Umar once saw a Jewish man, he was begging. And Umar radiallahu anhu called the governor and he said, why is this man begging for? He said, all his life he's paid taxes, now he can't fend for himself. Why is he begging?
So in Islam we have the first occurrence when a Baytul Mal, i.e. a community chest, the collective fund was established. Then Umar radiallahu anhu appointed officials for the administration of this, so that it was given to children, to fuqara, those people whose needs were not, to widows, to orphans, to education, to health care, to looking after prisoners, so that the army also and the soldiers had a wage. This is what social policy is, brothers. No other, this is the first occurrence in history where we have. Before, yes, there was sadaqah. In the time of the Jews and the Christians, there was sadaqah. People gave charity and helped people in need, but there was no formal institution of collecting the money and then ensuring it is distributed to these various categories of people. And to give you an idea, so this was Abu Hurairah who bought 500,000 dirham back from Bahrain. When the lands of Iraq had been conquered, 86 million dirham were collected from the lands of Iraq on an annual basis.
In spite of all this, this was the personality of Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala that Qatada relates. He relates, you know, on one occasion, he's late for Jummah. People are waiting in the congregation. You know, the congregations in the masjid waiting for the Amir al-Mu'mineen to lead the Jummah prayer. And it's time and the Amir al-Mu'mineen is not there. The Sahaba become anxious. Now all of a sudden, rushing, the Amir al-Mu'mineen comes forward to the minbar and he apologizes. And what he says to the companions of Rasulullah and the believers, he apologizes and says, okay, my brothers, I'm sorry that I was delayed. The reason I was delayed is because I had washed my clothes. Listen very carefully to this. This is the Amir al-Mu'mineen. You know, Kisra, when his name would mention, would see nightmares, terrified. You know, these were the superpowers. And he's there washing his own clothes. And he says, I was waiting for this pair of clothes to dry. I had no clothes other than this. This is the Amir al-Mu'mineen. The Amir al-Mu'mineen. On one occasion, Zayd ibn Wahab says, I saw him in the market. And I looked at the garment that he was wearing, and he counted the patches on his garment. My young friends, he had 14 patches. 14 patches. This is the Amir al-Mu'mineen. I mean, just one narration comes to mind. On one occasion, Sayyidina Ali radiallahu ta'ala saw Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala running. And he asked, O Amir al-Mu'mineen, why are you running today? So Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala responded, the reason I'm running is because one of the camels of the public treasury has run away. And I'm going to catch it, I'm going to find it. Sayyidina Ali said to Umar, you have tired the leaders that are going to come after you. Meaning you have set such high standards that whoever becomes the Caliph or the Amir, they will never be able to compete with you or follow your example. It's too high. And he turned round, listen very carefully, my friends, he turned round and said to Sayyidina Umar, La tulumni ya Abul Hassan. Abul Hassan was the kunyat and the title of Sayyidina Ali. He said, La tulumni ya Abul Hassan. Oh Abul Hassan, don't blame me. Why? I swear by the one that I sent Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam with prophethood. If so much as a lamb was to fall inside the river, Umar will be responsible for it on the day of judgment. You know, if this was the concern Umar had for an animal, for a lamb, that he felt that if a lamb was to die in the river, wander off on its own accord, fall inside the river and die, Umar would be responsible for it on the day of judgment. What do you think his concern was for the general believers?